We're here with Lars Jan in your studio. I mean, I guess maybe we would just start by introducing yourself and maybe the work you do.
I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I guess my schooling was in theater, but before that I was a photographer. I realized that the reason I like theater is because it's a totally integrative form. The more recent projects I consider to be constellations, so that there's usually at the center of the constellation a kind of large performance installation or performative work. And then there are other pieces that are created in development, like light boxes or a series of prints or a video installation or a printed work or a different version of the performance. But any one discrete work is not the work.
In describing your practice, you talked about this idea of genre bending. Could you elaborate more in terms of that idea of especially the idea of bending genres, the idea of crossing genres, and what does it mean for the nature of the work you do?
I think for a long time, I just struggled to classify what I was doing to people who were asking me that question, like, what is this thing? And so for years, I made performances, but they never were in theaters. They were in film festivals, media centers, museums. I run what I call a performance plus art lab called Early Morning Opera. It's a way for me to acknowledge the fact that everything that I make involves other people. Like, the most important thing that I do is build the creative team. People who usually are artists or other thinkers who are making work that's inspiring us, that's somehow related to the topic. Although it's tough, I try to bring in new creative folks into the creative process so that it really allows the work to be totally genre agnostic. The idea of what we're using in terms of any formal ideas that we have are really just about illuminating the subject.
I mean, the relationship to architecture, to the work, especially as far as the idea of the frame. You're trying to see things from a particular condition, but you're also trying to encapsulate certain portion of that reality, or that fiction, or whatever that narrative. And I would argue that your work sort of takes on and challenges that frame in a very peculiar way. The idea it encapsulates a certain amount of narrative fiction. I wanted to just hear you talk about that.
Yes, somebody once said, it said to me that it feels like you really love rectangles. Like, what is it with rectangles? I don't know, it's like anything other than like the very banal idea that right angles are just so human. It's just like the dialectic and the coldness of the rectangle or the square is like the foundation of my practice. I want to represent something that feels infinite. You have to create it in miniature somehow.
Yeah. Another word that is used in the description of your practice, the idea of emerging technology, the idea of like how technology kind of affects the work. How do you see your work in relation to technology and emerging technology specifically?
On one level, I find screens at the center of our lives metaphysically. There's a whole branch of work that involves screens and projection and video manipulation and projection of the self. And then there are some other projects where we're using, a few years ago, we were using a LiDAR scanner. It was a piece that was about archiving and about memory and about kind of analog versus digital formats of memory. But that particular technology felt like, oh, I'm working with a company, I'm calling them up and I'm saying, I've seen examples of your technology, I want to make an application in real time, in performance, and they'd say, oh, that sounds like we've never done that, let us send you something. And then we figure out how to sort of tinker with it and kind of apply it to our work. That feels like, okay, we're at the cutting edge-ish of use of technology in thinking about themes that are totally contemporary. On the other hand, there's projects like Slow Moving Luminaries where I worked with a company and I said, I need these to go up and down 25 feet through apertures in a roof when the roof has water on it. They looked at a lot of different ways to do that, and eventually they thought, well, let's take scissor lifts, like those kinds of genies basically that you'd have in most spaces to paint the ceiling, and hack them, take out the batteries. Working with people who are creative technologists who just hack existing technology and kind of create these strange Frankensteins, they became inspired by the challenge of pushing their understanding of the technologies that were available to them into a space and into an application that they had never thought of, or perhaps never thought that they would have the opportunity to. It was childlike. They started like the collaborative relationship. There was an excitement to it. The most fundamental technology is actually speech and then figuring out ways to inspire and create passion in everybody who's working on the project.
But moving into the White Album, I mean, I think the idea of the kind of political activism, and of course, as an artist and as a visual artist, the kind of interesting aesthetics kind of really merge together. How will you actually describe that sort of conjunction, or you're interested in mixing these two things?
I have a feeling about like what's just. I have a feeling that drives me, and usually that stream of thought or feeling finds its way into the work in some way. My interest in doing the White Album, I'm still actually interpreting it as what it is that we've made, as opposed to what my intention was. Joan Didion has this beautiful mind, and her capacity as a writer, just aesthetically, is so phenomenally delicious and incisive. And she's like, what's the role of an artist? How do you kind of create a narrative out of this chaos, which is the late 60s? As an artwork, the essay itself actually contradicts her helplessness. The essay itself is a fantastically meaningful story about that struggle. Because she says elsewhere in a different essay that, and I'm paraphrasing, something along the lines of, if I felt like going to the battlement, going to the barricade would make a difference, then I would. But unfortunately, I don't.
Right.
And I just disagree with that. Her response is to ruminate on that, and my response is to make work that actually leans into the public discourse and tries to participate in like the idea of that barricade.
You're sort of producing something that enters through the eyes, into a kind of nervous system. It's not just purely,
well, I think it's
not just purely activism, let's say.
No. I feel like I spent a lot of my life in a kind of space of mental pinball. The times when that rhythm dissolves are either when I'm in nature or experiencing a great artwork. Those are the two places where, before I was an artist, I experienced those things. I would become more permeable in the context of nature or a great artwork. If you create an experience where you're going into the nervous system of a person, right? An audience becomes porous. An audience becomes more empathetic. We're trying to talk about something that everybody wants to tap into that's bigger, that's supra to that. All of the work, all of the aesthetic choices that I make is about increasing that porosity.
The White Album, having seen the piece, and at least one of its versions in BAM, what are you thinking, what's going to change?
I mean, Joan Didion's an icon nationally, and the work is a masterpiece. And I worked so hard for so many years, along with me and my partner, along with the institutions who were supporting us, to try to get the rights. So that itself was a magical achievement. And we're so happy to bring that essay, which is about LA and about California from the late 60s. It's a little convoluted to get into, but there's actually two audiences involved in this performance, and one audience is on stage, and their experience, a lot of their experience happens inside this piece of architecture that you've created on stage. And what's fundamentally important is that they can be seen by the audience that's sitting in the theater, but they can't, for the most part, be heard. And the thing that I'm spending the most time on trying to figure out right now is, how do those two different audiences catalyze each other? How do they have an ionic relationship? When they actually have the opportunity to encounter each other, they become more than the sum of their two parts. And this whole group of people has a conversation, at the moment, inspired by the kind of prompt 2068. Seems a lot more like the distant future than 1968 feels like the distant past. That prompt starts to kind of cross general conversation. And my question now, for the people who lived through the 60s and for the people who are in their 20s now, right? Who are those people who are the same age, because there's something about youth in terms of questioning fundamentally what's going on with society. Is there anything we can learn from the potential energy of the late 60s? So we perform every single word of the White Album from the very beginning to the end. And when we end, we have this conversation. It's a critical part of the work.
Thinking of an audience that maybe hasn't seen this and maybe doesn't know the work of Joan Didion's, firsthand, and what will they expect to see, or how will you, imagine that kind of reaction to them?
I think work is actually always fairly prismatic. It just has so much to do with every single individual viewer as to what they see, what story they craft, where they happen to be, the phone call that they had before they walked into the theater. There's a little capsule within the performance, which is, she talks about a group of people who are student protesters who are trying to figure out what they should say at their press conference the following day, and they're talking about what their slogans should be. Rather than documenting that kind of conversation or portraying that conversation historically, I wanted this work also to deliver an opportunity for that audience to participate in a similar conversation. The first sentence of the essay is, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. I just very palpably want people to ask themselves, well, what stories do I tell myself to live? And to have a conversation about that. Sometimes people say that, oh, you're preaching to the choir because you're kind of doing a work in a temple of culture. I don't think the choir exists. I think it's not real. Hopefully this work is an incubator for conversation that actually, part of the idea is so that the resonances of those conversations move out of the theater and into people's lives and elsewhere.